CEO found her feeding stray dogs in the rain. The rain had softened to a misty drizzle as Emily stood outside Olive and Wine, adjusting a loose golden curl. She wore a borrowed blue dress and had spent her last tip money curling her long blonde hair. Her lips held a rose tint, her shoes were modest, and her heart brimmed with hope. At 24, Emily lived in a cramped studio, worked part-time at a bakery, and had grown up in foster care. Despite it all, she believed in real love, gentle, lasting, and true. Tonight's blind date, part of a social experiment called Hearts Anonymous, felt like a new beginning. Matched only through letters and voice chats, she had poured her heart into every word exchanged. Before walking in, she whispered, "Just be kind. Maybe this is the night everything changes." A hostess led her to a candlelit table in the back. The name Nathaniel rested on a place card next to the untouched wineglass. Her heart fluttered as she smoothed the skirt of her dress and sat down. Minutes passed. Then he arrived. Tall, chiseled, dressed in a designer suit. His shoes gleamed, his watch glinted. Nathaniel. He paused when he saw her. A slow, calculated glance from head to toe. And then, a curl of his lips, not a smile, a smirk. "Sorry," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "You must be at the wrong table. This is a blind date, not a shelter for the homeless." Emily froze. Her chest tightened. Her breath caught in her throat. The warmth drained from her face, replaced by a stinging red. For a moment, she just stared at him, unable to comprehend the cruelty. The restaurant fell eerily quiet around her. Conversations hushed. A fork clinked against a plate. She stood up, chair scraping slightly against the floor. Her voice, when she found it, was barely a whisper. I'm sorry." She didn't look back as she pushed past the stunned hostess, out the door, and into the rain. The cool drops hit her skin like needles. She didn't raise her umbrella, didn't care that her carefully done hair was falling limp, or that the blue dress now clung to her like second skin. She ran. Down the sidewalk. Across the intersection. Her breath came in ragged sobs as tears mixed with rainwater. Turning into a quiet alley, she collapsed onto a low step behind a row of dumpsters, her arms wrapping tightly around herself. Her body shook, not just from the cold, but from something deeper. Rejection. Humiliation. The kind that burns. From somewhere behind her, traffic moved. Horns blared. The world continued. But for Emily, the night had shattered. Daniel Walsh had not planned to witness a scene that would stay with him for days. He was seated near the corner of Olive and Wine, nursing a cup of chamomile tea after an exhausting meeting with suppliers. The restaurant was still buzzing, though his attention slowly drifted toward the commotion near the entrance. That was when he saw her. A young woman with long, loosely curled blonde hair walked in. Her blue dress was modest, slightly crinkled at the edges, but her posture was hopeful, almost glowing. Her hands gripped her purse tightly. She looked around, her eyes bright, scanning faces. Then it happened. The man at one of the tables sneered, looked her up and down, and muttered words Daniel could hear even from his seat. "Sorry, wrong table. This is a date, not a shelter for strays." The girl's face turned pale, then red, then pale again. Her lips trembled. Without a word, she turned and fled, her heels clicking rapidly on the tile floor, disappearing out the door into the soft drizzle of rain that had begun to fall. Daniel sat frozen. He had never seen anything so cruel played out so publicly, and something in her face as she turned, something raw and honest, tugged at something deep in his chest. Without hesitation, he grabbed his coat, opened his umbrella, and followed her. She moved quickly, but not aimlessly. Daniel kept a respectful distance, careful not to frighten her. He had no reason, no plan. He only knew that he could not unsee the look on her face. A few blocks down, near a closed bakery, she finally stopped. Rain soaked her shoulders, but she did not seem to care. She dropped to a crouch on the sidewalk beside a trash bin and opened her small purse. With gentle fingers, she pulled out a half sandwich wrapped in napkin. Then, a soft whistle. Out from beneath a nearby bench limped a skinny stray dog. His ribs showed, his fur matted with dirt. The girl's eyes softened as she laid the sandwich down and whispered, "Here, buddy. You deserve this more than most. The dog wagged its tail tentatively, then began to eat. Daniel stood a few feet away, watching. Then, slowly, he walked up and raised the umbrella over both of them. She startled and looked up. "Sorry," he said gently. "I saw what happened back there." She wiped her cheek quickly, not sure whether it was tears or rain. "Are you here to laugh too?" He shook his head. "No, I just could not walk away after seeing that." The dog looked up at Daniel, then settled beside Emily's feet, tail thumping against the wet pavement. "You did not have to follow me," she said. "I know," he replied. "But I wanted to. No one deserves to be treated like that, especially someone who gives away her last bite to a dog in the rain." She looked down at her shoes, soaked and muddy. He was hungry. That guy back there, he wasn't. Daniel knelt beside her, still holding the umbrella. "You're kind. That is rare. And it's not weakness." Emily blinked. She had heard kind words before, but rarely without strings attached. This felt different. Quiet. Sincere. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small handkerchief. "It's clean," he said, offering it with a shy smile. Emily hesitated. Then she took it. "Thank you," she whispered, wrapping it in her palm like a small promise. They stayed there for a while, Emily, Daniel, and the stray dog. Rain dripped steadily from the umbrella's edges, but inside that small circle of shelter, the storm felt far away. And for the first time that night, she did not feel invisible. Emily glanced sideways at the man beside her. The streetlight above the convenience store flickered gently, casting a soft glow on the patch of dry ground beneath the awning. Rain still fell just inches from their feet, the world beyond the awning blurred by the steady drizzle. She clutched the handkerchief he had given her. Her hair, damp and slightly tangled, clung to her cheek. Her instinct told her to get up and leave. People did not help without expecting something in return. She had learned that too many times. But this man, he had not mocked her, had not pitied her, just held an umbrella and stood beside her like they shared something as fragile as silence. "I can leave," Daniel said gently, sensing her discomfort. "I only stayed because I thought maybe you needed someone not to disappear this time." Emily studied his face. He looked older than the boy who had insulted her, by at least 10 years. His features were strong, but kind. His eyes didn't dart around impatiently. They stayed, steady and honest. "You're not from around here," she said cautiously. Daniel smiled. "Not really. I was in town for meetings. Came here for dinner. That didn't go well for either of us, apparently." She almost smiled. Almost. He reached into a paper bag he had placed beside him and pulled out a small pack of pastries. "I got these just before you walked in. They are still warm. Would you like one?" Emily hesitated. Then, quietly, she nodded. They sat in silence for a moment, chewing the sweet, flaky pastries. The rain continued to tap rhythmically on the metal roof above them. After a few bites, Emily spoke. "I used to think rainy nights were magic." Daniel turned toward her. "You don't anymore?" "I guess. Magic doesn't show up for everyone." Daniel looked thoughtful, then asked, "What do you do? I mean, besides offering sandwiches to stray dogs and braving blind dates?" She chuckled softly, the first real sound of amusement since they met. "I work part-time at a bakery. Pay's not great, but the leftover pastries are worth it." He waited. "I draw," she added quietly. "Illustrations. Mostly children's stories. My own little fairy tales that no one's seen. Why not show them?" Emily shrugged. "No one's ever asked." Daniel leaned back, nodding slowly. "Well, I am asking." She turned to him, studying him again, unsure whether he was just polite or genuinely curious. "And you?" she asked. Daniel folded the pastry wrapper carefully before answering. "I run a few organic farms outside the city. Grew up with a man who raised crops, taught me everything I know." Emily's brow lifted. "You were raised on a farm?" "I was an orphan," he said simply. "Bounced between homes until I landed with Mr. Harris. Old guy with rough hands and a soft heart. He didn't have much, but he gave me a life." She looked at him differently now. Not as some stranger in a clean suit, but as someone who knew what it meant to need kindness. Then she asked the question that had been pressing on her heart. Why did you follow me? Daniel's expression didn't change. He met her eyes directly. Because your eyes didn't look like anyone else's in that restaurant. She blinked, confused. You didn't cry because someone rejected you, he continued. You cried because you still believed they might not. Emily swallowed hard, tears threatening again. But this time, they came from a different place. He stood, brushing off his coat. I should probably let you go. But if you ever feel like finishing that fairy tale, I'd love to read it. She smiled, small but real. Thank you, she whispered. Daniel nodded once, then stepped into the rain, umbrella rising above him. Emily watched him disappear down the street, feeling something stir inside her, a tiny spark of warmth in the cold city night. She looked down at the pastry bag, then at the little stray dog still curled beside her feet. Maybe, she murmured, magic shows up in pieces. And that night, under the awning, with crumbs on her lap and a stranger's kindness still lingering in the air, she believed in pieces. Emily stared at the business card in her hand, the name embossed on the front. Daniel Walsh, Green Haven Farms, gleamed faintly under her apartment's dim light. She had tucked it away in her coat pocket the night they met, unsure whether she would ever look at it again. But she did. And 3 days later, after texting a hesitant, "Is the invitation still open?" she found herself on a bus heading out of the city. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her sketchbook in her lap. She had told herself this was just a visit, just curiosity, nothing more. The scenery changed quickly as the city melted into quiet suburbs, then into fields and tree-lined roads. When the bus finally pulled to a stop near a gravel path marked Green Haven Farms, Daniel was already waiting by his truck. He wore jeans, worn boots, and a white shirt rolled at the sleeves. No suit, no umbrella this time. Just him, waving as if they had known each other for years. "I'm glad you came," he said as he helped her down from the bus. Emily smiled, still unsure, still cautious. "I almost didn't." "But you did." The drive down the path opened to a vast stretch of green and gold. Tomato vines wound along wooden stakes, rows of cucumbers curled beneath large leaves, and sunflowers stood like sentinels along the edge of the field. Horses grazed quietly beyond the orchard fence. 2 dogs barked joyfully as they ran up to the truck. Emily's eyes widened. "It's huge." Daniel chuckled. "That's what people usually say. Wait until you see the back pastures." He gave her a quick tour, introducing her to the team, young interns, elderly field hands, a middle-aged couple managing the greenhouse. They greeted Emily with warmth, offering lemonade and jokes. "He talks about you," one of the older women whispered with a wink. Emily's cheeks flushed. "He barely knows me." "Sometimes that's all it takes to know someone's worth knowing," the woman said. Later, Daniel handed her a small, leather-bound sketchbook. "What's this?" she asked. "A gift. I figured someone like you shouldn't be sketching on napkins." Emily opened it slowly. The pages were thick, creamy, perfect for ink and watercolor. She looked up at him, stunned. "I want you to draw what you see here," he said. "Anything. Everything. If you feel like it." And she did. All afternoon, Emily wandered the farm with her sketchbook. She drew the rows of peppers, the curve of the barn roof, the toddler chasing chickens, the sun filtering through grapevines. By evening, the farm gathered around a fire pit just beyond the fields. Emily sat quietly on a hay bale, the sketchbook resting on her knees, half a drawing of a sunflower and a dog unfinished on the page. Daniel approached with 2 mugs of cocoa and sat beside her. "You're quiet," he said gently. She smiled faintly. "This is the first quiet that feels safe." The flames flickered, casting shadows that danced across their faces. Someone was playing guitar. Laughter bubbled from a group near the logs. After a long silence, Daniel asked, "Emily, have you ever been in love?" She looked into the fire. Her voice was almost a whisper. "I've imagined it. In stories I read. In the way someone might tuck a blanket around you without asking, or remember how you take your tea. But me?" She paused. "No. No one's ever chosen me that way." Daniel's hand tightened slightly on his mug. She turned toward him. Have you? He gave a small smile, thoughtful. Not really. There were people. But not someone I wanted to build something with. Not someone who looked at the world with wonder, even after being bruised by it. Emily's breath caught. I think, she said slowly, I just always hoped one day someone would choose me not because I fit an idea or expectation, but just because I'm me. Daniel looked at her, the firelight catching the gold in her hair, her eyes glossy but unafraid. Maybe that's what makes love real, he said, when it sees everything and stays anyway. Emily didn't reply, but she didn't need to. In the quiet crackle of the fire and the distant hoot of an owl, something passed between them. Not promises, not declarations, just understanding. And for Emily, that was a beginning she had never dared to hope for. Emily had planned to stay just 3 days. 5, at most. But the rhythm of the farm pulled her in. The rustling of leaves in the early breeze. The sound of chickens clucking near the coops. The smell of fresh earth after a morning watering. Every moment felt like a brushstroke, delicate and real. She found herself drawing constantly, in her sketchbook, on spare pieces of paper, even on brown paper bags. Daniel had given her a small corner in the farm's common room to paint. A makeshift easel, a stack of sketch pads, and a chair by the window that looked out onto rows of lavender. No one interrupted her there. The workers came and went with friendly nods, sometimes bringing her coffee or fresh fruit without saying a word. It was quiet, and for the first time in years, Emily felt seen. Their connection was not built on grand declarations but on shared silences. They would walk the paths between the tomato rows, hands brushing but never fully touching. They laughed over breakfast, traded stories under the stars, and cooked simple meals in the farmhouse kitchen, Daniel chopping vegetables, while Emily stirred the soup. One morning, after a night of gentle rain, Daniel met her near the creek. The water had risen slightly, and the stones used to cross were slick with moss. Looks like you are stuck, he said, smiling. Emily shrugged. I'll wait until it dries. Daniel stepped closer. Or, she raised an eyebrow. Or, he knelt slightly. Hop on. You are not getting those shoes wet on my watch, Miss Illustrator. Emily blushed, laughing. You are serious? He did not answer, just waited. Finally, she climbed onto his back, clinging to his shoulders as he carried her across. A couple of workers nearby watched the scene unfold, grinning. Looking good, boss, one of them called. Emily's cheeks flushed deeper, but Daniel just winked at her and said, You are making me look good, you know. Their laughter echoed into the trees. That afternoon, as Emily sketched under a fig tree, a voice broke the peace. Emily? She froze. Slowly, she turned. Jason. He looked out of place among the greenery, his leather shoes already dusty, sunglasses perched on his gelled hair, and that ever-familiar smirk on his lips. The same man who had humiliated her now stood there, hands stuffed awkwardly in his pockets. What are you doing here? She asked, standing up slowly. I wanted to say sorry. About that night at the restaurant? He began. I was a jerk. I was embarrassed. And I took it out on you. I shouldn't have. Before he could finish, Daniel appeared, wiping his hands on a cloth as he stepped out of the barn. He glanced between Emily and Jason. Is everything all right here? Jason turned. Yeah, just talking. I'm Emily's ex. Daniel stepped closer, his voice calm but unwavering. I do not care who you were, but if you came here to hurt her again, I need you to leave. Jason scoffed. I came to apologize. Daniel didn't back down. Then say it and go. Jason looked at Emily, waiting. But she said nothing. No nod. No invitation. I hope you are happy, he muttered, and walked back toward his car. Silence settled. Emily exhaled, her shoulders still tense. You didn't have to do that. Daniel turned to her. I know, but I wanted to. Why? She asked, voice softer now. He looked at her, eyes steady. Because you deserve someone who protects you, not someone who watches you get hurt. Her breath caught. She had never been defended like that, not by a friend, Not by a family member. Not by anyone. She whispered, "Thank you." Daniel smiled gently. "You do not have to thank me. Just keep being who you are." That evening, Emily sketched again. But this time, she drew herself, not as the girl who ran out of a restaurant crying, but as someone standing tall in a field of sunflowers. And at the bottom, she wrote just one word: enough. Emily stood near the gate of the farm, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her sketchbook carefully tucked under her arm. The morning mist still hovered low, curling around the edges of the fields like a soft goodbye. Daniel stood beside her, quiet, his hands in his pockets. Neither of them had spoken much that morning. Too many words would only make it harder. "I never thought I would stay this long," Emily said, smiling faintly as she looked out at the dew-covered pastures. "I was just supposed to finish those drawings." Daniel glanced at her. "I am glad you did." She turned to him, eyes shining. "Thank you for letting me believe again. In people. In myself." He hesitated, then reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. "There's something I want you to take with you." He handed her a small, square box, wrapped in simple brown paper and tied with twine. Emily blinked, surprised, and carefully untied the string. Inside, she found a printed booklet. The cover said, "The Farm That Dreamed of Stars," and beneath it, in smaller letters, "Illustrated by Emily Rivers." Her breath caught. She flipped through the pages. There were her sketches, edited, inked, colored, and captioned, brought to life. Tiny animals with hopeful eyes, barns glowing under starlight, children with muddy boots and beaming smiles. Her art, her story, real. "I took a chance," Daniel said softly. "Sent it to a friend at a small children's publisher I know. They loved it. They want to see more. This is just a mock-up, but it is a start." Emily stared at the booklet, tears rising quickly in her eyes. You did this?" He nodded. She looked up at him, lip trembling. Then, without a word, she stepped forward and threw her arms around him, hugging him tight. The sketchbook slipped from her hand and landed softly in the grass. She buried her face in his chest. "You don't understand. No one has ever treated my dreams like they mattered." Daniel wrapped his arms around her. "Well, they do. You do." They stood there in silence for a moment, the world around them muted by the weight of that gesture. For Emily, it was not the printed book that made her cry. It was the fact that someone had seen her heart and honored it. Eventually, she pulled away, wiping her eyes and laughing softly through the tears. "You keep doing that." "Doing what?" "Making it impossible to forget you." Daniel smiled. "Good, because I do not want to be forgotten." The old farm truck rumbled in the distance, the one that would take her to the town's bus stop. Emily picked up her sketchbook and turned back toward the house for one last look. The fields were waking, just like always, but everything felt different. As the truck pulled up, Daniel opened the door for her and helped her climb in. She paused before closing it, leaning out one last time. "If they publish this," she said, tapping the mock-up gently, "I am naming the main character after a certain stubborn farmer." Daniel smirked. "Let's hope he is handsome." She laughed, then closed the door. As the truck pulled away, Daniel stood in the road, watching until the dust settled. He did not wave. He just stood, hands in his pockets, heart a little heavier, but also lighter somehow. Back in her seat, Emily pressed the booklet to her chest and looked out at the winding road ahead. She did not know what would come next. But for the first time in a long time, she believed it could be something good. Something worth drawing. Something worth sharing. And maybe, just maybe, something worth coming back for. New York welcomed Emily back with its usual noise, honking taxis, bustling crowds, and neon signs flickering into the night. But something inside her had changed. She no longer shrank under the city's pace. Instead, she walked with quiet confidence, her sketchbook tucked beneath her arm, and her heart filled with a warmth that lingered from the countryside. Back in her tiny apartment, she transformed her wall into a gallery, pinning up sketches from the farm, illustrations of smiling children, sunflowers, and wide skies. One by one, small commissions trickled in: birthday cards, custom portraits, and sample illustrations for children's books. With every brushstroke, she was building not just a career, but a life. Daniel stayed in touch. Sometimes it was a box of fresh strawberries from the farm, other times a handwritten note that read, "For your inspiration," and maybe a pie. His gestures were never loud, but always meaningful. Then one Saturday morning, the doorbell rang. Emily opened the door, surprised to see Daniel standing there, with an umbrella tucked under his arm and a small girl peeking from behind his leg. "Hi," he said, his voice soft. "We were in the neighborhood." Emily laughed. "Really? The farm is 2 hours away." Daniel shrugged. "A very wide neighborhood." The girl, no older than 5, wore a pink dress speckled with daisies and held a small stuffed bear. Her brown curls bounced as she stepped forward. "This is Lily," Daniel explained. "She's the daughter of one of my farm managers. Her birthday's coming up and all she wants is a drawing of herself as a princess." Emily knelt to meet Lily's gaze. "A princess, huh? What kind of crown does Her Majesty wear?" Lily giggled and pointed to her head. "A big one, with stars." Daniel smiled. "So, think you can work your fairy magic?" "Absolutely," Emily said. "Come in." They spent the morning sketching together. Lily described her dream kingdom, a unicorn friend, and a castle made of candy. Daniel watched from the sofa, his eyes never straying far from Emily. Later, the three of them went for a walk in the park. Lily ran ahead, chasing pigeons and spinning with joy. Daniel and Emily followed at a slower pace. "You're good with her," he said, glancing at Emily. Emily smiled. "Kids are honest. They don't pretend to like you. When they do, they mean it." Daniel nodded. "I think she sees something in you. Magic, maybe. Or maybe she just likes my glitter pens," Emily teased. But when Lily turned around and shouted, "You're like a real fairy, with golden hair," Emily felt something stir. Daniel grinned. "Told you." Emily looked at him, and something unspoken passed between them. A connection, a tenderness. They sat on a bench as Lily fed birds nearby. Emily opened her sketchbook to finish Lily's portrait. As she drew, Daniel leaned closer. "You've changed," he said quietly. "You're shining." "I think it's just the sunlight," she replied. "No," he said. "It's you." Emily